And let's zoom out and take a look at the bigger picture now. Joining us, I'm very pleased to say, is Tsvetta Kaleynska, consulting founder and CEO, RILA Global. So nice to see you, Tsvetta. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, we just got that consumer confidence data coming in slightly lower than expectations. I'm just seeing here, in actual fact, registering the biggest drop that we've seen since April, which takes us back to what is arguably peak uncertainty around those tariffs and the macro picture. What are your takeaways?
Good to see you and good morning to everyone. So first and foremost, I do have to say that I analyze consumers and I analyze what consumers say online about any topic or category. So on paper, it may show that inflation may be softening. When I analyze consumers, actually in the consumer confidence, overall, what I saw is that it is very fragile. Basically, the conversations that I analyzed in the last 30 days from 12.2 million US consumers showed that while the data points may be showing us an easing inflation, consumers really feel the pinch on a daily basis. Many expressed their skepticism when officials basically posted numbers or post numbers, as they say that their day-to-day is just getting harder and harder.
Okay. Obviously, throughout the course of this earnings season that has just gone, we have been talking about a bifurcated consumer. I mean, those who continue to spend, not too worried, particularly those, as some of the surveys have been pointing out, University of Michigan comes to mind, with big stock portfolios don't seem to think things are as bad. But I'm just wondering what you're seeing as far as that dispersion across the consumer, given that you speak to over 12 million people, which I'm sure keeps you very busy, Tsvetta.
So when reviewing the major categories like energy, shelter, transportation, medical care costs, there are a few different things and interesting things that come up. I'll start off with the most interesting one, which is actually energy. So year over year, energy has actually only been up 1.2%, which really helps keep that headline for the CPI, almost like CPI in check. When I analyze the consumer sentiment specifically around energy, it actually tells a different story, and that is that actually gasoline remains as a flashpoint of focus for consumers, as many conversations by consumers really link up those rising pump cost to a broader distrust when it comes to economic stability, which echoes then again the negative sentiment, which I think we've seen over the course, since you mentioned, since April. So this really shows a more highly visible category, which I think should be taken a look or with a closer lens almost. Shelter remains strongest emotional response from consumers. So that category has been fueling consumer anxiety, which I think we also see in the report, as many of the consumers who shared online their experiences with shelter, whether that's with landlord, so renting or home purchasing, were very concerned about rising costs. And actually here, that's where we bring in the mortgage rates discussions and the lack of affordability in general. And the last one that I can mention is actually the food. So food, we account for what consumers have talked about groceries. And again, in-person dining experiences, cost rising in general for groceries specifically was a huge negative driver this month.
Okay, so there's some caution around energy, shelter and food, very much weighing on the minds of consumers right now. What are they telling you about how they're feeling about what we're hearing with respect to tariffs, you know, whether we are indeed seeing people sort of trying to get ahead of what is expected to be higher prices down the road, maybe buying those discretionary items now with some sort of anticipation or thinking that, you know, they might actually have to pay more later. But also, you know, if I could fold into that question, what their expectations are or hopes are around whether rate cuts will actually help at the margin.
What a great question. So in the last 30 days, of all of these 12 million discussions that I analyzed, 35% of those expressed a distrust in the current economic situation, and also very much related to uncertainty. It tells me a few things. There's definitely a perception versus reality gap. So even when inflation data shows moderation, consumers still feel like costs are rising faster. This perception is really amplified by the headlines and social media chatter. The second one is that essentials does really drive sentiment. So as I mentioned, food, shelter, gas, they were considered by consumers a highly visible category, and they were non-optional. Additionally to those, medical care costs and medical care, anything healthcare related, was impartially also considered by consumers as a non-negotiable, and the rising cost of that was mentioned as well. And overall rising prices, domination, basically they brought in this negative sentiment. So at large, I'd say trust of the consumer and the confidence of consumer is at risk. It has been at risk actually for the last year and over a year, and skepticism towards promotions that basically all brands who are trying to talk to the consumers have been discounted, and that has actually led to a big portion to less discretionary spending, which then has brought again the consumer confidence level further. There is, however, a very positive outlook as we approach the holidays. I did see a large amount of discussions when it came to holiday spending and the holiday spending outlook. So although inflation and the consumer confidence are definitely down, to the upside, we can mention that consumers are very much looking forward to holiday spending. So I do think that picture will change in the coming month.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough time for companies if you do have that level of distrust in the market coming from the consumers that really need to aggressively promote, particularly around those core seasons. Tsvetta, it's been a really insightful and useful conversation. Thank you so much for your time today. Tsvetta Kaleynska, who is a consulting founder and CEO of RILA Global, joining me. Appreciate your time.